When I upload this, the Simpsons season of Fortnite is either ending or over completely, and it was definitely a mixed bag. There was a lot of things I think were really, really good, some really, really bad that we're going to talk about today, but in general, I did want to kind of say goodbye to this season because I think it was really, really fun. And now I know it's not a full season, it's essentially like this little seasonal chapter. I just refer to it as a season because it's easiest. In general, though, this whole thing transformed the map into Springfield Island. We talked about it before, and it included so many interesting areas from the show and also combined with the Fortnite map. Places like the Springfield Nuclear Power Plant, the Burns Manor, Corruption Corners, the Springfield Town Square, the Donut District. There was a lot here that I think was really fun. And I think it's unfortunate because the way that Fortnite works, nothing really seems to last forever. Now, it's totally possible that Springfield Island could return in the future, but typically, these maps come and these maps go. And it was such a stylized recreation of parts of Springfield and parts of the Simpsons lore that were very interesting. Now, before we get into the positives and negatives on what this season actually was, I do want to say something really quick, which is, this is important, whether you like Fortnite or not. And the reason that I truly believe that this season was important, that this entire Springfield Island thing was important, was because what it did was multiple things. It propelled The Simpsons into more of a cultural mainstream for modern day young people. You got to remember that it is a show that I'm not saying young people don't watch it, but that has been around for a long time, has maintained its popularity, and has had its ups and downs. So it's good for that thing to be exposed to more people who are going to go out and check out even the old classic seasons of the show. But also, what it did was gave us a Simpsons game for the first time in a long time. And that's one reason I'm so bummed that it's going away, because we haven't really gotten a real Simpsons game that I can think of since the Xbox 360 and PS3 era with the Simpsons game. And so to see this and play this Simpsons Battle Royale, it was not only fun of its own right, but I truly do believe that there are going to be business people, especially high up, who look at this and gauge interest in the Simpsons IP in video games based off of the success or failure of what it did here. The Simpsons Tapped Out was the last real game, and I wouldn't even call it a real game. I would say the Simpsons movie one was like a full-on console game. But The Simpsons Tapped Out was mobile, and it was, kind of one of those mobile management games that was fun for what it was, but it was very clearly being pushed by EA to make money. And that's like the last thing we saw from them for a long time out of The Simpsons in gaming. And so this is important in many ways, which I'll get into again later on in the video, but that's why I wanted to talk about it, because people are going to look at this and decide based off of this if people want to see these characters in games, whether we like it or not. And so I want to talk for a few minutes today about this because I enjoyed this season a lot. I wanted to say thank you to those of you who supported my channel through this season by, purchasing things in the Fortnite store using code DJAY123. It meant a lot to me. And I do have a question of the day for you, which is, what kind of crossover would you want to see in the future, maybe in a similar style to this? I think one of the saddest things about this season is that it was a mixed bag for a lot of people, because the map itself I think is pretty perfect. These areas that have so many references and hidden gags to the show, whether it's going into the backyard of the Simpsons house and essentially going back there and finding Bart's treehouse, climbing up it, finding all kinds of stuff, or it's going to the comic book store and finding all of these issues of Radioactive Man. Hey, even breaking down a wall in the theater and finding a very obvious Avengers Infinity War parody poster. These are really, really fun little gags, Easter eggs, and things that made the map fun to explore. I actually can't think of the last time that it was this fun to look around a Fortnite map and actually discover things. In fact, I probably had more fun with that than the actual playing of the game, killing people and things like that. Maybe the last time was the Marvel season. I always go back to that with Doom's Castle. There was a lot of little Easter eggs and things like that there. But I do also think that gets to one of the hearts and cores of the problem, which is a little bit missed opportunities with the Simpsons season. Now, it's, very possible that it'll come back in the future, that we'll see something like this again. But in general, we got all these really cool areas that, unless there's some major revival in the future, are going away. Which is sadly something that happens all the time with Fortnite, where they make something really cool, and then it gets wiped out for the next big thing. It's probably my least favorite thing about the game. I've always wished that there were old playlists that would keep these maps alive. I know people do a lot of their own custom playlists and islands and things like that, but I really wish there was a way to just go back to this island and re-experience this in its own playlist in the future. I also noticed that this season was one of the worst in a long time for the matchmaking, in terms of feeling like you're going up against Olympic level gods. I don't know what it was. I'm not going to say that I'm the best Fortnite player ever. I have no pride on that front. Do I wish I was a little better? Yes, but I'm definitely not. But in general, I can win matches. I'm not winning all the time, but I can win. It took a long time this season for me to actually clutch out a win on this, especially in duos. And I noticed that this was a pretty common complaint, is there's almost a mixture of this season with the gunplay, the way guns were balanced, things like the 5-gun, things like the deodorant applicator, and the way that they can kind of be exploited in certain situations. It did also remind me of the Marvel season when people were just chucking Captain America's shield everywhere during a period when it was broken, except that the entire Simpsons season felt that way to me, where it felt like there was always something kind of busted in the rotation of weapons. Even people taking advantage of things like the Blinky fish and combining it with the squishy early on in order to make it an insane amount of distance over like 2 seconds and just clutch out a win because no one could even see them coming. They're moving like the Flash. Things like that were not necessarily well thought out at first. It also is a shame that there were a lot of characters that went neglected, and I mean, they weren't just Simpsons characters. I mean, characters like Apu, I would have loved to have seen, even though, now they act like he's just a racist character. He was a very fun Simpsons character. Characters like Groundskeeper Willie, who they actually alluded to they wanted to have in the game, but didn't have enough room for, even though they had enough for 2 different Peely costumes. I just don't really understand why they made some of those choices. I mean, even if you're looking at characters that are like Fortnite based, there's a few that were not included in here that are very bizarre. Like, there was a Simpsons Hope that should have been in this season that everybody fell in love with. Like, when they showed this in the opening short and they showed Hope in a Simpsons style, people loved this. I've seen so many people with this character as their profile picture online, people talking about her on Twitter. Even I said on Twitter a while back, hey, this is a character that it looks like a lot of people would buy. I'm kind of confused why they never put her in, and they didn't. Making choices like removing Homer's car very early in the season from the shop rotation was very, very odd. There's just a lot of choices they made that were a bit bizarre with the season, even though I love it. I mean, to me, one of the biggest was that they went out of their way to redesign Duffman into Slurpman and, get rid of the beer references and combine him with the Fortnite lore, but then they never even added him as a playable character. So there's very weird stuff in the Simpsons season where it's like, I'm looking at the map and I'm thinking it's amazing. I'm looking at the Easter eggs, I'm blown away. I'm looking at the hidden gags and I'm thinking, this is so fun. All these references, characters, even the story quest where you talk to Marge and talk to these characters and go and interact with the characters around Springfield. They're really cool. But you're looking at balancing, you're looking at missed opportunity of characters both from the Simpsons lore and from Fortnite itself. And there's some choices I just don't understand. Now, all of that said, like I said before, I do think this is important because what it does do is gauge interest. People who are big businessmen, they don't look at things like you and me, like with a soul and with heart and mind and art appreciation. No, most of them look at things with dollar bills in their eyes. Basically like a cartoon character, like Mr. Krabs grabbing a stack of cash. They're not looking at this from the angle of The Simpsons as a piece of art. They're not looking at it from media preservation or anything like that. I'm sure there's developers who do. But in general, like the people who are in charge of a lot of decisions, they look at things based off of how much money it made. And when we're looking at how Simpsons has not had games in years, we're looking at the last major Simpsons game that I can think of, at least, being the Simpsons game on the Xbox 360, and we are now multiple console generations out from that. Okay, we're talking mid-2000s, and we're now going into 2026. People are looking at this brand, and they're seeing, okay, Simpsons still does well on TV, but if you ever want to see things like that Hit and Run remaster or Road Rage or the Simpsons arcade game come back again, any of these things, right? Or you want to see new games, they have to be financially supported. And it's why, unfortunately, things like Tapped Out and even things like Fortnite, which I know some people don't like, I enjoy it, some don't. It's actually one reason why I think they can be important, is they do gauge that interest. They gauge if people still like these characters in a different medium that they didn't originate in. These are television characters that made the jump to games and have had a lot of games over the years, but got fewer and fewer and more spaced out in terms of their releases, to the point where they just stopped making them. And so, as much as I do have positives and negatives about this season, I think in general, to me, the reason this mattered the most, other than just its creativity, is because going forward, it's going to be a gauge on if people want to see The Simpsons in video games. And, you know, I hope that it's in more than just Fortnite, as much as I do enjoy the game. But either way, like, for me, as someone who wanted another Simpsons game for a long time, being able to play a Simpsons Battle Royale game for a few weeks was really, really fun. I wish it lasted longer. I wish it was a little better balanced. I wish they had included more characters, made a few different decisions, but I'm happy with what it was. I hope to see something similar to this again, and I'm interested to hear your comments down below on what you thought about it. If you enjoyed this video, you want to leave a like, subscribe, let me know what you think. I always do appreciate those things and you answering the question of the day. And also, as well, I would love your support on Fortnite. Code DJAY123 is really, really helpful to me every month. My YouTube channels are not the biggest, so when people use that, it is extremely helpful to support my content, and I appreciate you. We do also have our own store, CosmoBunny.shop, where we take old media, damaged books, things like this, that cannot be sold or have to be sold cheaper because they have been beaten up. And what we do is we preserve some of that media, we transform it, using a piece of it to create something new, using it to make coasters, keychains, trays, and more out of resin transformatively. And code DJAY123 over there also gets you 10% off your first purchase on our store. So I'd love to see you there. I hope you have a fantastic day, and as always, everyone, stay shway.